and then we will go ahead and go with the program. So welcome and thank you for joining us. I'm Walisha Wilson. I'm the founder of NewLife-Second Outreach Incorporated. And as you know, April is Financial Literacy Month. So this month, we are empowering the justice involved clients that we serve by providing financial education and financial literacy resources throughout this month on our social media pages and through community events like this one. This month and throughout the year, we are committed to equipping those we serve so they can be restored and being financially restored is part of that. Financial literacy, according to the President's Advisory Council on Financial Literacy, is defined as the ability to use knowledge and skills to manage financial resources effectively for a lifetime of financial well-being. Why does financial literacy matter? Without an understanding of basic financial concepts, people are not well equipped to make decisions related to financial management. And people who are financially literate have the ability to make informed financial choices regarding saving, investing, borrowing, and more. The US recently ranks 14th in a global study of financial literacy. Our financial literacy rate was a failing 57%, which is much lower among those who currently and recently incarcerated, as they often come from low-income backgrounds and experience financial stressors early on in life. The income levels of people prior to incarceration are, on average, 41% lower than those who have never been incarcerated. A 2014 study found that incarcerated people were less likely to ever have a checking account or credit card, and more than twice as likely to take out payday loans, and 3 times as likely to pawn an item that their non-incarcerated counterparts have done. Therefore, the basic understanding of how to manage personal finances and efficiently allocate earnings are void because these are crucial components of ensuring that people do not resort to crime due to the lack of finances. The goal of this webinar is to help you build your ability to manage money, give tips on how to save money, build credit, and budget your money, as well as how to access and use financial services that work for you and empower you, particularly those of you who are low income and economically vulnerable because of our criminal records, to make informed and financial decisions by providing you with the tools, information, and opportunities to build skills in financial decision-making so that you can grow into a financially well individual. Now I'd like to introduce you to our guest speaker and presenter, Tiffany Kirk of Regions Bank. Tiffany is the Community Development Manager for Regions Bank and is responsible for Georgia and South Carolina initiatives. Tiffany's responsibilities include providing advice and guidance on community development needs and oversight community development loans, investments, and community service provided to underserved communities. Tiffany is from St. Paul, Minnesota, where she completed her bachelor's degree in business administration and earned her elementary teaching license at the University of St. Thomas. The first 4 years of her professional career were dedicated to being an elementary school teacher for St. Paul Public Schools. Since 2006, she has had various financial education and community affairs positions within the banking industry in both Minnesota and Atlanta. She is the chair of the Loan Committee for Atlanta Neighborhood Development Partnership and a founding member of Project Restart, a collaborative effort focused on reducing recidivism among returning citizens. She enjoys music, home improvement projects, and spending time with her family and traveling. Thank you so much, Tiffany, for joining us. And from this point, we're ready to see your presentation.
All right. Thank you for that warm introduction. I'm going to go ahead and get the
share your screen
presentation up. But it's good to see a couple familiar faces. And Crystal, it's nice to meet you. Sharon and Walisha have been a part of Project Restart in past years. And so what Project Restart is a nonprofit that is designed specifically for people who have been justice impacted, formerly incarcerated, to provide them with connections. These are the resource queens here, so they have more connections than I'm sure I do in a lot of ways, but just providing them with opportunities that they may or may not have been aware of, and finding ways that that we can support them through a little bit of financial assistance, mentorship, and seminars like this. And so I'm just happy to be here. This is a great way to kick off Financial Literacy Month. But I do want to thank Sharon and Walisha for doing the work that you do, because without you all getting the word out about sessions like this and all of the resources that can help people to, move forward in their financial landscape, it's really difficult for them to get ahead. And so we'll talk about sound money practices. We're going to really start with just some statistics. We'll also get into banking basics and how to make sure that you're selecting, the best accounts and product services from a financial institution, whichever one you choose, and why that's important to build that banking relationship. We'll then get into credit. We'll talk a little bit about the difference between renting and home ownership, because that is a big part of building financial wealth and generational wealth. And then we'll talk about money management. I'll touch a little bit on identity theft at the end, but I do want to save time for any questions, any best practices that you all are personally practicing, or things that you're seeing out there that could be additional resources for us to share. And so again, I am the community development manager, and what that means in my role is that I am looking for ways to strengthen our low and moderate income communities through the bank's resources. So if that means providing a grant to a nonprofit or several nonprofits, they can submit requests to the bank that would be reviewed by myself for Georgia and South Carolina. It's also looking at investments that the bank can make in things like affordable housing and small business development. So we do a lot of work around helping entrepreneurship training programs and other small business centers across the 2 states. And then the other piece is, service. And I consider myself a servant. And so doing classes like this, financial wellness, serving on the boards of different nonprofits, and as an advisory member or just a committee member, is something that I'm really passionate about and enjoy. So I have to give you a disclaimer. I am not a legal advisor. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a financial planner, and I'm not a tax advisor. So I am here for educational purposes. And if there are questions that any of you have that are beyond my scope of expertise, I can get your information to an appropriate banker that would be able to answer those, or another, community partner or resource program that would be able to help with those questions. So let's just jump right in. And, we have a small group, so I think that we can afford to answer some questions as we go. But again, I'll leave some time at the end for us to address other additional questions. So just today's consumer, if we take a look at people that are in this country, in the US, 31% have a plan for their finances. 63% have an emergency fund, which is down from previous years. According to a recent survey, about 40% of people that answered the survey only had $400 or less in cash put aside. And that's at all income levels. I think that's really important to understand, that it's not just lower income people that don't have an emergency fund. It is people at all income levels, because we are so reliant on credit. We're so reliant on borrowing. And it's really important to have that emergency fund, or that nest egg put aside, the rainy day fund, whatever you want to call it. But so that statistic is a little staggering, which leads right to the next one, that 38% of people are living paycheck to paycheck. They have very little wiggle room or money that is, put aside that they don't have to rely on that next paycheck. So that's a little bit alarming. And 41% of people do feel behind on their financial plans. What are some of the things that might keep you up at night? I just want to open it up again. We have a small group, but what are some of the things that keep you up at night when you think about your personal finances? Anyone want to share something that keeps you up or stresses you out about your finances?
I'd like to go ahead. Go ahead, Crystal.
Oh, I'm going to say not have enough money in my savings. I have enough to pay all my bills, but I definitely need to be more responsible with saving money.
Okay, so like a lot of people that were in these statistics here, just not having enough put aside. That's a stressor. So thank you for sharing. I know, Sharon, you were about to share as well.
Yeah, I wanted to say, being at my age, I'm, 66. And what stresses me is thinking about, living out the rest of my years, however long that is, in poverty. And I want to really break that. I have the ability to make money, to hustle and everything. But sometimes when you get a certain age, you don't have, people not gonna hire you. So I'm more of an entrepreneur and trying to develop that, because I'm not gonna get hired in some employment type of position. And that's not really what I'm looking for anyway, but I do apply from time to time. But age discrimination is real. And so those times that I did work and I had a business in the past, I did not save money towards this time in my life to retire.
So just the thought of having to catch up so that you can eventually step away and be able to live comfortably month to month, year to year. That's a valid concern. I think a lot of us are getting to that point where, I wake up in the middle of the night, my hips are hurting, my back is hurting, and I'm thinking I'm getting old, I'm getting older. And so that is something that I hear a lot of people talk about. And, I know people in their 40s and even 50s who are just starting to save for retirement, and so there is a lot of catching up that has to be done, to feel like you're in a position to where if you became disabled, or if you were to retire, would there be enough with a combination of your personal savings, your 401k and Social Security benefits to be able to sustain? A lot of people, once they do retire, do scale back in their lifestyle and maybe the space that they have, downsizing and things like that, but it's still a real stressor. So I appreciate that. I know for most people it's debt. That's the one thing that tends to keep people up at night, is when am I going to ever be able to pay off this debt? It's just that monkey on my back that just never goes away, with high interest rates and people being able to afford only a minimum payment or a little above that. It is like being on a treadmill. You're running, but you're not going anywhere. And so hopefully we can talk a little bit about maybe some strategy around some of these stressors, or you walk away with maybe just a new sense of what can be done, what is in your control. I always like to share this statistic with people just to kind of level set the wealth gap in America. The three of us, so Sharon, Walisha, and myself, live in Atlanta, where this phenomenon is one of the worst in the country, of that wealth gap between those extra or very low income and the highest income earners in the city. This is a national statistic. In 2016, the net worth of a typical white family was $171,000. In that same year, the net worth of a typical Black family was 10 times less, $17,150. And so it's an alarming statistic. It hasn't gotten better. And in some years, it's gotten even worse. And there's a lot of reasons for this. This is not just personal choice, although some of it can be, categorized into that category. But let's talk candidly. I mean, we got a small group here, but what are some of the reasons for this gap?
I think some of it is fear of moving upward and leaving people behind and being judged, like not going to college or excelling in school because you don't want to be called the Oreo, or things that might separate you from your Blackness. Now, I experienced that for me growing up, so that would, it's a conflict type thing, and you want to be your best and everything like that, but at the same time you're leaving maybe some of your closest loved ones and their family behind, and it's like a mark against you, but you want to do the best for you.
That is really interesting. And it's kind of that crab in the barrel mentality, right? Where if I make it, people want to pull me back down to where they're at because it's uncomfortable for them to see you succeed. So it's the fear of success and what might come with that potentially. That's valid. So that's a good point. So that's definitely one of them. I'll speak about some of them that are systemic, which we know of. Yeah. I do work for a bank. I do work for Regions Bank, but banks have been infamous for redlining. Mm-hmm. And this is why my role exists. In 1977, Congress enacted the CRA Act, Community Reinvestment Act, meaning you can no longer redline, which was literally getting a map out and putting a red line around the zip codes that they would not lend to. That is redlining. It still happens, and we're still hearing about banks even recently that are getting fined for this type of practice. And so that's definitely a part of it. Black families not being able to purchase properties in certain communities where the values were higher for many years. I mean, that's still in some people's covenants in their mortgages that, you cannot sell this home to a Black family. I mean, that is really a fact. There's a great book called The Color of Law that gets into a lot of this. So there is systemic racism, there is systemic discrimination that makes it difficult. And there's the lack of education, there's the lack of commitment to empower people to understand why the credit score is so important. How do they clean up their credit? How do they start to build their credit, start to build these assets? And one other thing that I'll mention is that we have a lack of generational wealth that is passed down. Obviously, if it's more difficult to become a homeowner, it's going to be more difficult to pass along a home or another large asset that's, real estate investments to the next generation. Many times we're leaving our families with debts instead of assets. We're doing the GoFundMe funerals instead of there being a trust or some type of a will that gives access to that family's wealth.
Exactly.
So we see it all the time, right? So I just think that this is important to just see, visually, and why it's so important to, take our finances very seriously and to be committed to it. I'll get more into home ownership, but this is just looking at the difference between Black, white, and white home ownership. So if you look at 2001, which is, over 20 years ago, the Black home ownership rate in this country was at 45%, white home ownership 72%. And if you fast forward to 2016, it's even lower. Okay, so 41% versus 71%. And now I think it's, somewhere still in that 40 to 43% range. But we've got a lot of catching up to do. And I will tell you this just personally, one of the things that I do look at, the bottom line there, the application denial rate. HMDA, HMDA is the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act, and that means that banks have to report how many applications that they're denying on a regular basis, along with how many are being approved. And every time I look at these reports, I get a sick feeling in my stomach because the number is always almost double of what the white denial rates are. And this is alarming. So I do a lot of work at the bank to help people to get connected to the resources to build their credit so they can come back and get approved versus just saying no. So
Tiffany, I was going to ask too. I had a question. I know a lot of times we are always sometimes quick to say, and then not this, sometimes there are valid reasons. I mean, a lot of times we will play the blame game and say, well, they denied me because I'm Black. When in fact, you just didn't have your stuff together. Your credit's poor. You didn't have money saved up. So a lot of times when folks look at these numbers too, it is alarming that 26.5% of folks are being denied, but that's not always because they're Black. It's because they didn't have their stuff together.
Yes.
So there are resources for folks. We can get our stuff together. We just got to take advantage of it. And most of these resources are free.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right about that. I mean, with home ownership, and again, I'll touch on it towards the end, the basics are you got to be on the job for 2 years, stable, steady 2-year employment, at least a 620 to 640 credit score, a pretty decent debt to income ratio. You can't have more money going out the door than coming in because there needs to be some money left over for that mortgage payment. And that's really the 3 basics, so it is about information, and it is about taking the time to learn that process before you, even apply for a mortgage. So yes, education definitely goes into that. But I think that more financial institutions should be putting their money into the training programs to get people ready. So I'll talk a bit about just some banking basics. There was a handout, you'll get a handout, I should say, after the close of this session that just gives you a nice checklist of the things that you should be looking for when you do establish an account, or if you're looking to, maybe move your account to another financial institution. Make sure that you're, putting it in the right type of place. I mean, the most basic type of account is going to be your basic savings account. And I should say, you can open this with the bank or a credit union. Credit unions tend to have lower fees, fewer fees, lower interest rates, not always. And they usually have a specific base of people that can open those accounts. but very similar to a bank with the product service mix. So compare, the different banks. Again, a savings account you can find at either bank or credit union. Checking account is going to be pretty basic, but allow you to do a whole lot more. You've got your debit card, you're able to pay bills online. Some banks are going to charge you that online bill pay monthly fee, but many are not, or charging you anything to pay your bills online. And then, looking at the interest rates across the different accounts. Interest rates are extremely low. They're not a way to really build wealth these days. It's always at this point going to be less than 1%, probably less than 1/4% for the annual percentage yield for any savings account. Another type of account you might want to consider is like a CD, a certificate of deposit account. That's a more long-term fixed term account that's going to pay you a higher interest rate if you have a higher amount of money to put aside into that account. I think at like a Wells Fargo, it's about $10,000 to open a CD certificate. Some credit unions could be $500 to open a CD account. Mutual fund accounts could be another idea, or money market accounts. I mean, there's a lot of different places. Where you put your money should really be dependent on what your goals are and what the use of those funds are. Diversify though. Don't keep all your eggs in one basket. I have accounts at 3 different banks for 3 different purposes. And Regents probably would want to hear me say that, but I've always kept my credit union account where I used to work. I have my Regions account, but I also, for business purposes, have a Chase account just because they gave me that $300 and, it worked out. So diversify, but really look at the benefits of each account. Also understand the fees of each of the account, because this is another reason a lot of folks are not banking, is because they say, well, the bank charged me so many fees, I don't trust them. But there's a lot of easy ways to avoid those fees. So are you all familiar with ways to avoid fees on, let's say, a checking account? Some of them are charging you a monthly fee, but you don't get charged this fee if certain things happen. Do you know what those ifs are?
If you have direct deposit is one.
Yep, direct deposit, yep.
Yes, that's typically the easiest way to avoid any monthly fee, is if you have your paycheck deposited into that account. The other way might be to have an average daily balance of a certain amount throughout that month. And that could be the other way. So I always encourage you, just read the fine print, but never be afraid to ask the banker questions. And this is one type of situation. I do encourage people to do this in person. You can open accounts online, but I just think it's a better way to make sure you receive the answers by sitting with a banker and actually building a banking relationship. So again, I would advise the handout that you get, that you look at that, because that's going to be a good set of questions to ask. The same is true. I don't know, Crystal, if you're an entrepreneur. I know Sharon, Walisha, and myself are, but the same thing should be true when you're opening any type of business accounts. It's no different. But the benefits of having a bank relationship versus using these prepaid cards and building your credit in alternate ways is you're building the relationship with the banker. They get to see kind of your habits, they know your vision, they know what your goals are, and it just makes it a bit easier to get into certain products, especially when it comes to credit, than if you don't have that relationship. So when you have a bank, you have a banker, and I just don't think enough people do take advantage.
Can I ask
Tiffany, I wanted to ask a question.
Okay, Sharon, and then Crystal will come to you.
So bringing up about building a relationship with your banker. Now, with the COVID, since the COVID has happened, a lot of bankers are not accessible. I have a credit union account. I've been with them 10 years. And the only branch for this credit union is inside of Grady Hospital. So my experience, because the administrative branch, they don't deal with the money, right? And they're right down the street from them on Auburn Avenue. So my experience of trying to deal with the bank since the COVID, they will not let me in. They would not let me in Grady Hospital. I had to sneak and play I Spy and all that, and then get accosted by the security. And it's just the hospital saying one thing and the credit union saying, no, that's not us. We didn't put this mandate in. Then the hospital say they did.
Yeah.
So I'm frustrated.
That's
so
tricky.
then I went up the street to Delta, which is walkable from where I live in Midtown. And they're telling me it'll take about a month because I wanted to do my business transfer and, close out the accounts I had at the credit union I've been dealing with for 10 years and open my accounts right down the street from me. And they said it would take about a month or so. And then I had to go through all of this extra stuff. So I'm just like, it's a hard place.
No, I will say that COVID did change things, the way that people are able to engage with their banks and their bankers. So you're right about that. I know that, at Regions, we have an appointment request on the website where you can put in a request for an appointment and a banker will call you back. Now, if you already have a specific banker that you have a relationship with, it may be a little easier to get that appointment. But yes, COVID has changed things. And, a lot of banks were completely virtual for many months, most of 2020. And so it really slowed things down. And I will tell you this, that banking is finding it more, the banking industry is finding it more and more difficult to find and keep bankers. Anything that's customer facing has been that way since COVID. And so you've got that issue as well, that there's just a lower capacity for them to be able to provide customer support. So they've hired more people that are remote doing call center work versus in person. So you're not alone in that, Sharon. That's a good observation. It is tricky, and it could be just as difficult going to a new institution. So keep at it. It's turning around, but it's just that ship is just taking a little longer to turn the corner than people thought. So thanks for sharing. And Crystal, you had a comment as well.
I just want to know, is it better to have your money in a credit union versus the bank? Because I belong to 2 different credit unions, but also Citibank. So
yeah, I think it depends on the purpose of what those funds will be used for. I think it depends on the convenience of that location. It depends on what works for you. But I wouldn't say one is better than the other. I just think it's, just comparing, they're both insured, that's the most important thing. The NCUA insures your credit union account, the FDIC insures the money in your bank account. So it's always going to be safe and protected. But if you're leaving that money there for an extended period of time, for a savings goal, which one is going to be paying the higher interest rate, which one, allows you to avoid all those monthly fees. Maybe you're looking at the ATM access that each of them lend. So it's just really going to be dependent on what your goals for that money are, as well as what you find important on a day-to-day basis in being able to access that money and maybe work with a banker.
One more question, right? So I'm in the process of starting my own nonprofit. And so you think it might be easier to get a business loan from a credit union versus an established bank like Citibank? Because I've been with all of them for years, over 10 years.
So it's every bank has different lending and underwriting guidelines that they look at. It may be, if you're just starting up, they may lend you, depending on what your credit looks like and depending on, if they can see what your average balances are. But it's heavily dependent on your credit. You may get a smaller loan to get started from either. But you may have better luck going to a non-traditional financial institution called a CDFI. That is a community development financial institution. Many small business owners and even, nonprofit leaders find they're a little more friendly with terms and underwriting and the criteria to get that first loan. So I would say one is easier than the other. It just depends on, which one specifically are going to and what their, guidelines are, what the criteria is that they look at.
So a CDFI, Community Development Funding Institution?
Financial institution, community development. Yes, and you can Google search that for your area in New York to see where the local CDFIs, and they also provide education and classes and free technical support. So that would be a good idea. So I'm going to move into credit. I don't know if any of you have checked your credit score, your credit report in the last year, but it's suggested that at least once a year you do check your credit reports, all 3 of them. It's easier now than ever to check your credit reports as well as your scores on a daily basis. Sometimes I think they're sharing it even too often, but that's not a problem. I that's not something I have a problem with, because you used to have to pay to get your credit score. So some of the easy ways to get your credit score is, for one, most of your banks are probably going to allow you to see your credit score as soon as you log into your online account. That's one way. Most credit card companies are offering that same service. As soon as you log into your credit card account, you're able to see your credit score. Other ways would be, sites like Credit Karma. That would be a good way to get your 2 of 3 scores, which I believe are Experian and TransUnion. I'm sorry, Equifax and TransUnion. And then you could go separately to Experian if you wanted to get that score. But those are some easy ways to, get your FICO score for free. And the way that you're able to get your credit report for free is, the easiest way is to go to annualcreditreport.com. And you'll be able to get that free. I know in Georgia, you can do this twice a year for free. So I'm not sure what the guidelines in New York are. I also included a handout. You'll get this if you wanted to print this out and mail it in to Equifax. You'll be able to get your reports mailed to you for free. Some people like to do it that way. They ask a lot of security questions. Some people don't know the answers to them when they do the online process request. So you can actually use this form to get your report. But that's important, I think, to do at least once a year, and to review it for any discrepancies, anything that, doesn't seem to add up. If there's, I looked at my credit report in the past and noticed there was, my name was spelled as Tiffany O' Kirk. My name is not O Kirk, it's Kirk. So reporting even small things like that, because you want everything to be accurate. But looking for those, and then also, if you're in the mode of trying to pay off debt, it's always good to look at your total debts on your credit report, maybe arranging them from lowest to highest, or highest interest rate down to lowest, to arrange those debts in order. A lot of people are also interested in paying off collection accounts. So this is another good reason to look at your credit report, is to look at that section that includes all of those collection accounts, so that you can begin to negotiate those debts. I've personally done this. I remember I had to break a lease at an apartment because I was buying a home, and the lease was, I think it was 3 months beyond the time that I was actually able to move in the house. So I knew I was going to have this bad debt on my report, but I did contact them, and I think the debt was about $1,800, and I offered 30% of that, and they took about 40%. And so that would be, if you're looking to, pay down debts, look at that first section of your credit report, so that you can start to, prioritize what it is that you want to pay off. So annualcreditreport.com. And there is a handout that you'll also receive that says your credit report and score. It gives these same charts that I'm going to pull up here. So you'll be able to see the visuals in that handout. So this is a range of your credit score. So your credit score ranges from 300 up to 850. That is your FICO score. There are different models out there, like Vantage Score, and some companies use even models beyond those two, but your FICO score is going to be kind of the average between the 3 scores of Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. If you're at that 300, that probably means you kind of started in a good position, because most of the time, people are starting at about 600. Within 6 months of getting your first line of credit, you're going to start somewhere around 600. The types of credit that build credit are loans and credit cards for the most part. You're not going to build a credit score by having a cell phone bill. You're not going, at least not to start. I know that there's some ways now that these companies are starting to report these things, but traditionally it's not been because you're paying a cell phone bill on time. It's not because you're paying your rent on time. It's typically that you have a credit card, a student loan, a car loan, a mortgage payment in your name, or you're a co-signer, or you're an authorized user on somebody's account, but your name has to be attached to that credit. So again, you start somewhere around 600. Each month you're gaining and losing points on each line of credit that you have based on your activity. We'll get to the breakdown of that. The place you want to be is obviously 700 or above. 850 is considered A+ credit. What is the benefit of having a higher credit score? If for instance, if I'm applying for a mortgage, what's the benefit of me having a 700? And let's say the bank is willing to approve me at 620. what's the benefit of me having a 750 versus a 620 credit score when it comes to getting approved for a mortgage?
Lower interest rate.
Yes. So your interest rate is highly, highly attached to your credit score directly. So when you hear bad credit, no credit, we don't care, we'll still approve you. You know, Pars Cars and all these other places that, you know, really make their money that way. It is because they're preying on people with lower credit scores because legally they're a higher risk. They can charge it. You know, they're not going to be penalized for that because the game of credit is all about risk and the chance of a return. So the 700 club is where you want to be with your credit score. This is the breakdown of your credit score. 35% of your score, that's the biggest portion of your credit score, is just have you paid your bills on time or are you typically late? So that's your past payment history. We don't know what the formula is, if it's, you know, 3 points for every on-time payment or you lose 3 points. We're not sure. That's never been disclosed by, you know, the credit reporting agencies, but it is the bulk of your credit score. So that's a really important one. The second largest is outstanding debt that you have, and your score might be lower if your credit card balance is close to the limit, or if you have just begun to use credit. That portion right there of outstanding debt could be a category where you're losing points. It's always suggested for any credit card that you do have that you carry no more than about 30 to 35% of what the limit is in any given month, that you're not revolving more than that amount over to the next month. So it's suggested that you pay your debt in full every month, but we know that people realistically are not doing that. So if you can't pay it off in full, which will also help you to avoid paying any interest, at least pay down enough to where you're not revolving more than 35% of whatever that credit line is. That's a big way for people looking to get into home ownership. That's one of the biggest suggestions that I make, is look at all of your credit cards and get each of them down to that 35% or less of whatever the credit line is. And you should see a pretty decent increase in your credit score that way. I will tell you this, during COVID and in other times, some credit card companies will automatically lower your credit limit, which can mess this portion of your credit score up. Has this ever happened to anybody where you had let's say you had a $5,000 limit and they reduced it down to $2,500? Has that ever happened to you? Okay, well, it does happen. It's happened to me before. And you know, it's a surprise because again, that can kind of throw off that ratio. If I had $1,000, you know, balance on that and it was a $5,000 limit, I'm okay. But if they reduce my limit down to $2,500, I'm almost at the 50% mark, you know, so that's important to pay attention to. And sometimes that happens when you're not using your credit card. Sometimes if the company has gone through some challenges, they may do that because they don't want to have so much outstanding, you know, access to credit out there. So just watch that. And then length of history, 15% of your points are coming from this, which is just how long you've had an account open. It's recommended you keep accounts open for as long as you possibly can. I think I got my first credit card when I was 17 or 18. I did not maintain that, but it does show that, you know, for how, I won't tell you how many years that is. I can't even do the math that fast, but it shows that I've had credit for a long, long time. But it suggested you keep accounts open. Don't get a new account, close one, get a new account, close it. Continue to maintain those relationships. The last two 10% portions of your credit score are inquiries. So that's new applications for credit, which you lose 2 to 3 points typically every time a company pulls your credit. Even if you gave them permission, you still will take that hit. When you check your own credit, you don't. If a company does a soft inquiry on you, meaning you didn't give them permission, but they see some general information about you to offer you credit, that doesn't count against you either. It's typically when you're at the checkout at a store and they say, do you want to save 10% today? Sign here. Or you need to apply for get a new cell phone and they need to run your credit. That's going to be a hard inquiry where you will lose those points, but you typically will get them back within about 30 days. And then the last piece is types of credit. Having a good credit mix will get you more points than not having more than one type of credit. So a mix would be a credit card, a car loan, and maybe a mortgage, or a student loan and a credit card. That's a mix. Just shows and demonstrates you can handle more than one type of credit. So any questions with the credit score?
I do. Like,
Okay.
I had a I have one of my credit cards and I haven't used it in a couple months. And then I got a notice from Experian and they raised my credit limit on that card.
Okay, that can happen. They can raise it, and that's a good thing when it comes to that 30% there at the bottom of the chart, because now your ratio is going to be even, it's going to be even better.
I thought maybe that they're trying to make me like use the card more.
They want you to
wouldn't
use it. I mean, the
Yes.
purpose of having a card is to use it. So not using it is actually hurting your credit score. Even if you don't do nothing, the typical thing is to use no more than 30%, but I aim to use no more than 20% of my card. So if you have a card that's $300, the goal is to spend no more than $100 of that card. And to just have them and not do anything with them is not helping. So even if you don't do nothing but go and fill up your car once a month, at least use the card. But when you pay it, make sure you pay it back before the due date and pay it back in full.
Yeah, because the one is for a store. So what I wanted something bought it from the store, but as soon as I get it, I try to make sure I'm going to have some money coming in to pay it off in full, because I don't want to get, start buying stuff that I really can't afford. Then I can't even afford the minimum of payments on this stuff, but they raised it. So maybe I'll just buy, and then I don't need to
even, I always suggest, and it probably is just a little nudge to use it, because that's how credit card companies make their money. They're banking on you having a balance that you revolve over to the next month, and the higher the balance is, the more they make. So it's just a slight nudge to encourage you to spend. But like Walisha said, it's good to just use credit cards lightly, regularly, pay them in full or as close to in full as you can, and for things that you absolutely need versus just wants. Groceries, gas, things that you're going to spend cash on anyways, and just paying it off when you get that bill. But yes, a lot of companies will definitely give you a congratulations email or something in the mail. We increased your limit. Doesn't mean you have to spend, but it can help with that ratio. But it's also, a lot of people get tempted and will go out and try to spend money. I would just say, lightly but regularly. We already talked about the 3 bureaus, so I don't need to touch on that anymore. When you do get your credit report, let's talk about the things that you'll see inside that credit report. You'll see a whole lot. If you've been using credit for as long as I've been using credit, my credit report is pretty lengthy. The first thing that you're going to see is all your personal information on the credit report. You may see an occupation of yours from the past listed, because once you complete an application, that data gets reported to the credit bureaus. All 3 of them are going to collect and report different information, so they can all 3 look, different from one another. So you'll see your personal identifying information first, which could include your social security number. It could just be the last 4 digits of your social security number. Then you'll start to get to the meat and potatoes of your credit report. And unfortunately, in the first section is mostly the negative accounts and those that you've defaulted or non-payment accounts, collection accounts, court judgments, foreclosures, bankruptcies. If you owe child support, that could show up in the credit report in that first section. So you'll definitely see that. Then you'll get into more of the loans and credit cards that will come in the next section. You'll see the name of the creditor, the account number, the type of credit. There's 2 main types of credit. You've got installment credit and you've got revolving credit. So installment would be loans. You're making the same monthly installment for a fixed period of time. And revolving credit is you can revolve it month after month and decide how much you want to pay, minimum, full or partial payment. So that would be identified as well as the type of credit. All account holders would be on your credit report. So for each line of credit, if you're an individual holder of that credit, it would just say individual. If you are a joint account holder, it would say joint. I don't have any joint accounts or credit with anybody. My son tried to get me to sign a co-sign a loan for him once. I said no, and he had to do a voluntary repossession of that car. So I thank goodness I did it, because he couldn't afford it. So he should have never gotten approved. You'll see the total amount of the loan, credit limit, the highest balance on the card that you ever had, the amount that you owe, the fixed monthly minimum payments, and then the account status. Is it paid? Is it unpaid? Is it 60 days late, 90 days late, 120 days late? And so you'll be able to see, usually it's 2 years worth of payments that you see, and you'll see it represented each month by a little star, and then there'll be another symbol if it was late. It's another symbol if it was unpaid. And so that's what creditors are usually looking at, is that 2-year period of how well you've paid those bills. I did learn something recently about medical debts. This has, become a really big deal for a lot of people. Medical debts now, if it's under $500, they're not going to, medical facilities are not going to report that debt at all. What is the other thing that I just read? So that's one thing. Also, I think it has to be 120 days late or non-payment for it to get reported versus 60, I believe. So there's more leeway there. And I will also share with you, there are more hospitals and medical providers that have financial aid, more now than ever. I was offered this. I have a high deductible healthcare plan, and I needed an MRI for an accident that I was in. And they said it was going to be $1,800. And they just simply, and I said, that's a lot. I don't know if I can pay that. And they said, that's your out-of-pocket costs. They asked me for 2 pieces of information, which was, what is your income? How many people are in your household? And they didn't ask me to verify it or anything. And they said, you qualify. And so, I mean, you just never know. And I think it's just really important, especially since COVID, to ask for these types of things. A closed mouth doesn't get paid, but I felt really fortunate that they approved me for that. So, but medical debts are becoming extremely big, and it's just important to find ways to get those taken care of, but they're not affecting you on your credit like they used to. Sharon?
I think the other thing I heard about, the medical bills on your account, after so long, they go away. Because it used to be like 7 years or something like that.
That's the other thing. They don't stay on for 7 years.
Exactly.
It's like once they're paid, they go off. That's what it is.
Oh,
So that's a good thing. Even though, medical debts don't look as irresponsible as other type of collection accounts, because you had to have the medical service, So, but yes, thank you for saying that, Sharon. It is that they don't stay on for the 7-year period like other collection accounts. Yes, go ahead, Crystal.
so if you co-sign for someone and they're not paying the bill, but you're the co-signer, will they go will they go and like try to garnish that person before they get to you, or what happens with that?
So this happened to my mother, who co-signed a student loan for not even a family member, but my niece's older sister, who's not my mom's biological grandchild, but my mom is just that type of person. So what happened is, after my mother made several attempts to try to get her to start paying, and she wouldn't pay, and she wasn't answering her phone for the collector, because she was actually the main account holder. My mother was a co-signer on this student loan. They started then to contact my mother, and they did threaten to garnish her wages. And then St. Paul Tiff had to, give her a call, like, look here, Kendra, we're not doing this today. And she did end up start to make those payments. But yes, whoever the other account holder is can definitely be threatened with, garnished wages and other actions.
Okay, so let me say this. This is maybe my situation soon. If I call up the finance company and give them his work number, like for them to actually garnish it, have access so they can garnish his check instead of trying to get to me. Would that be, I'm thinking about actually doing that, like calling them and writing him a letter, because he hasn't been paying it's been 1 month, but he told me he's not going to pay also. So I'm saying, like, I know where you work. I know for them to garnish your check, I mean, they got all his information from the financial agreement that he signed.
Right.
So should I go ahead and give them his work address and stuff so they could, in case something comes up, they could garnish his check and I won't be affected that much?
So this is where I'm not a tax advisor. Comes, but here's what I will say, and maybe Walisha, maybe Sharon has something else. Here's what I do know. Company, if the company knows where he banks, they can send a letter to that bank stating that we need to garnish their wages. Now, I don't know if there's a legal process that comes before that, which I'm pretty sure there is, but
Okay.
it is up to that company to contact or get that letter to the bank. So that happened a couple times when I worked in a branch where I saw that happen, where they say, oh, we got a letter, you know, that we got to start garnishing this person's paycheck and taking a portion from the direct deposit to pay this company. So that is, you know, that's something that you would probably have to talk directly to that company about. But that's going to have to, you know, be discussed with that company of the process that they're going to have to take. But it's a risk you take. I know it's a sad one, but it's a risk you take when you co-sign or you're a joint account holder and that person decides to stop paying.
Okay. And thank you for the reminder in the chat. I forgot.
All right, so just moving ahead with more of the ways that you can, you know, start to improve your credit, obviously checking it, you know, prioritizing the things that you want to take care of. If you see anything there that you know, like to pay down or pay off, setting up automatic payments, just make sure that the money is in that account. I have almost every payment, even from Netflix on up, you know, to my mortgage payment, that's an automatic payment. And that really helps quite a bit. And then reducing the amount of debt you owe. When you're serious about debt repayment, a lot of people say, well, I don't have the extra money, but every time I've gotten serious about paying off a debt, increasing what I was paying on it to something higher, it does get done. It's just about discipline and staying focused on it. So don't take on new debt, obviously, but looking for things to cut out in your budget to be able to apply more towards each of your debts. And I like the snowball method of, you know, starting, and some people say arrange your debts from highest interest rate to the lowest and take care of that highest interest rate debt to the lowest interest rate debt. I personally like to arrange debts in the order of the balance, the smallest balance first up to the highest, because I can, you know, have a sense of satisfaction when I'm able to check one off the list, you know, and continue to then take what I was applying towards that smallest debt, put that towards the next largest debt, and just continue to do that. So
That's the method I
you
use
know,
too.
yes. So it just depends on your personality type and what motivates you. Some people don't want to look at that amount of interest they're paying every month on a credit card. So pick something that works for you, but the ultimate goal is finding a way that you can do it. But I will tell you, it's very difficult to get out of debt when you're just paying minimum payments across the board every month. It really is. So if you're serious about debt repayment, you know, pick the method that works for you. Keep those revolving credit balances low. Don't move it to another card, but I will say this, there are some good ways if you're serious about paying down the debt. There's some good balance transfer offers that come across my mailbox and emails, where if I do transfer a balance, maybe from a higher interest rate card to this other card, it's a 0% rate for 8 to 10 months. If I'm serious about paying down that debt, that would make a lot of sense. But just be mindful of what the interest rate will be after that period expires, because it could be from 0 to 25%. And then in that case, if it's not paid off, will it make sense for you? Don't close credit cards unless it's absolutely getting you into too much trouble and you cannot resist the temptation. I would say keep those accounts open, use them lightly, regularly. And then if you're trying to get on track with your credit, don't open new credit cards. You might get suggestions. I think about Credit Karma, and Credit Karma will say, hey, if you open 4 or 5 more revolving lines of credit, your points will go up X amount. Just be mindful of what your ultimate goals are. It might not be the best situation for you. It can maybe temporarily increase your credit score, but if it's going to get you into trouble, I wouldn't suggest that.
I have a question, Tiffany. When you say don't move it, I thought that was the purpose of those balance transfer cards. I thought
no, so in that case, it makes sense when you can get a lower interest rate. But the thing about it, I would say the biggest thing is to pay attention to when the time period is expiring, because it will only be for a certain number of months, maybe a year. Because if it ends up being that you're only paying the minimum and the balance barely moves and you end up on a higher interest rate card, it might not make sense for you. So just, be strategic, I guess, about it.
Okay.
but I think it's helpful. I do think I've done it personally when I've been in debt repayment mode, and I think it's a great way to do it. So we'll move from credit to talk a little bit. And then I also say this in terms of fixing your credit, there are companies that are out there that you can pay to fix your credit. I would highly caution you to just do your research on that company or that individual, because they may charge you $500 to maybe $1,000 to fix your credit. And many times those are things that you can do personally to take care of your credit. It may take a little more time, but a lot of times the solutions that they're using is flooding the creditors with dispute letters.
Same thing you can do.
Same thing that you can do. So, do some research of how to repair your credit, watch some YouTube videos, but many times it is just continuously disputing items off your credit, which you can dispute actually legally. You can dispute everything if you want to off of your credit. And if accounts have closed or companies have merged or they're no longer reporting, they may remove those things. So that could be, a good way to get your credit taken care of. But I would look for maybe a HUD certified company that works with people on credit, or another reputable nonprofit in your community that would help you to repair your credit.
And what I did is,
Uh-huh.
I can remember before I had a job, and that's probably why, because your credit gets differently when you're unemployed than it is once you start getting hiring. But in May of 2020, my credit score was like a 520. Now it's like 700, and I think I messed up and closed something, so it's back down to like 698. But I was glad to finally get up to 700.
Yes.
And I haven't figured out why it's 700 at one and it's different on the other two. But to be able to say I finally made it to 700, and that's only because I've been writing letters, but I haven't really written as many letters. I simply started a self account, a self-lender loan, where I basically send this money in, I'm loaning it to myself, and at the end of the year, I get the money back myself, minus their fees. Every month, they take $48 out of my account, and they report to all three credit bureaus. And then I ended up getting an Open Sky card, and it was a prepaid card. I put $200 on it, made sure I only spent $25 on it in gas each month. But I watched YouTube videos that says when to pay your bill and when not to pay your bill. And I put everything on auto draft, which also saved a lot from interest as well as late fees. And so you can do it. It's taking like 2 years for me to get up to that 700, but those folks are going to charge you the same amount that you can be doing. You can do it. Just, get some stuff, even if it's a self-lender. A lot of people say they don't have it. I think the lowest you can pay is like $20 a month. But if you can't afford to do that, it's other little things that you can do, like write letters, because they have to be able to prove that the debt is authentic and all these little things that they do. But YouTube is a great resource.
I call it YouTube University, because it really is. I mean, I learned to fix my disposal, how to do home improvement projects, things like this. I mean, just staying, up to date on a lot of this type of information. So thank you for sharing that. And I think, in the banking world, we have secured loans and secured credit cards, which work in the same way as what you just said, Walisha, where you open a secured credit card with a minimum of $500 that you put into a savings account that's linked to that secured credit card. And then they issue you a credit card for that limit of $500. You use it, you pay it off, you use it, you pay it off. You could do a loan that way, where they loan you the money, you just pay on it every month. It's secured by the collateral cash that you're leaving in that account. And you can build your credit pretty quickly. They report to typically all three bureaus. So that is a great way to build your credit. And can you put the website, Walisha, in the chat for, you said what was the name of the company, the credit card company? Oh, you're on mute.
I put them in the chat, Open Sky as well as self-lender.
Okay, I don't have my
I put it back
chat
down.
alerts. Okay, thank you.
I'll
Ladies,
also send everything back out as well. In the email, when we follow up all this stuff, we'll go back and go in the email.
Okay.
I would like to say that I got an email today. I think it was today. I sent it out that there's an organization that's working with formerly incarcerated people, and they do a $150 loan to help with the credit. So, and I sent it out today to you guys, so you probably have it.
I've been traveling. Yes, I'm in Memphis right now, so I'll have to get to my emails. But thank you. I'll look at that definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, and I will say the credit bureaus are now also reporting things like cell phone bills, rent payments. I will tell you, Experian is the one of three for sure. If your landlord or property manager is willing to do the reporting, that they have a rent report or a rent bureau. And so that can help you if you're making on-time payments with your rent. You can research that and just look at Experian Rent Bureau report to find out how you can get your landlord or property management company to report. But there's a lot of alternative reporting that's starting to happen because, if credit is all about responsibility, it shouldn't matter if you're paying on a credit card bill or a cell phone payment. It's all about responsibility, right? And risk. And so I'm glad to see that the bureaus are starting to shift some of the credit scoring models to reflect some of this. So I would say do some research on the new alternate reporting. I think they called it alternate credit reporting, because it can help you, but you have to kind of know how to make sure that these companies are reporting your information and your data to the bureaus so that it gets reflected. So good conversation. So I want to move into, let's see, I want to move into the home ownership, because this is obviously, again, another way to build wealth and to have an asset, to have equity. I'll share an example. Just recently, I bought a house in Atlanta in 2020 at the top of the year, right before COVID. Thank goodness I was in. I bought the house for $215,000 at the beginning of 2020. And there's a house in my same subdivision that's listed at $279 right now. Okay, that means that I could list mine for at least that much, probably more, because the owners before me did even more updates than this house had. And so that's instant equity. If I sold my home, I owe $206,000 on it because I've been paying off of that $215 that I originally purchased it for. I'm sorry, yes, $215. I'm down to $206. So the difference between what I can sell it for, which could be $285, and me owing $206, and then I pay my realtor, 4 or 5%. That's pure money, and that's the difference, I think, between renting and home ownership. A lot of people are buying properties not for themselves to live in, but for Airbnb reasons and, duplexes to be able to rent out a unit, have your tenants paying your mortgage payment for you, and you live rent free. That's a great retirement solution. I think of you, Sharon, when you're talking about, trying to think of the best way to live during retirement, especially if you have to catch up. A duplex situation could be a great way to do it. You don't even have a house payment if you get the right renter in there that's making, basically, you could charge for rent what your mortgage payment is, or a little less maybe, and you're coming up with a portion of that mortgage payment. But real estate has always been a part of the mix. Most people that are millionaires have started in real estate, and it's definitely a part of their portfolio because most property does appreciate over time versus depreciate. Property and real estate is an appreciating asset. So I want to just talk about the fees, because I think a lot of times, if you haven't, and have you all owned homes or have you not? What is your situation?
I own a condo, but I just wanted to say in New York State, there's a lot of first-time home ownership courses. And once you take that course, which is usually free, you're able to connect with a nonprofit, and some of the banks have like saving programs that help with your closing. And like for every dollar you put in, they give you 4. And like one in New York State, you have to be in that program for a minimum of 10 months, no more than 2 years. And in the meantime, they're helping you with your build up your credit. They go through a great budget, so you can actually be able to afford when you buy the house, what your mortgage is going to be. And then you find out about other deals like forgivable loans when you buy the house. But that's in New York State. So
yes, and they have classes. I mean, the first time home buyer class, which you have to take in order to qualify for down payment assistance, that is typically, an 8-hour class. In Georgia, I know you just have to take it through a HUD certified agency. But we do have similar programs, but I think the other one that you're referencing, where it's a match, is like an IDA account, individual development account. So for every dollar you put in, the company or nonprofit puts in 3, and it has to be used for either entrepreneurship, home ownership, or education typically. So I know that the United Way in Atlanta has IDA programs. I just have not heard of many people that go through it and come out on the other
I've been
side.
through
I
it.
know it happens. What'd you say, Sharon?
I had a United Way IDA program before, but I used it for not the home buyer. It was for, I think it was for education. But
Yes.
NACA is to me one of the best home buying programs because it's not based on your credit, no down payment assistance, and they guarantee you 1% under what the mortgage lending rate is. That's locked in, as well as you only have to save like $2,500 to show towards your moving expenses, and you get a counselor, and basically you're committing to being a member, and that's like $50 a month, you know. So if you ever run into a crisis, then they kind of cover your situation, your mortgage for like 6 months. So
A little
that's
safety net.
that's a national program.
What's the name of it again, please?
NACA, NACA.org. If you go on their website, you can see all the things they got going on. And you can actually purchase multi-family units, like you were talking about the duplex, but you can get up to like, I think depending on the state is how much, because you're up in New York, so the program is going to be more of a higher level of what you qualify for, because the property rates are higher upstate than they are here. But I think
Thank you for sharing that.
I think it's close to 300,000 here now for a single family, and then they have, like, if you want to do multifamily, to be a landlord and live in one, you have to live in one of the units.
It has to be owner occupied.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that.
I've just decided that I don't want to buy a house. I mean, for 2 years I've been trying, and I have just weighed the odds. And I think with me, I've gotten into that midlife age thing where I've probably let people influence you, oh my God, you're 46, you ain't bought a house, you can't be a wealth without buying a house. And I've gotten to the point now where I don't want to buy a house.
I bought my condo at 47. I bought my condo at 47 years old.
So I think a lot of it is just our culture, or folks just like they always feel like you got to be married, you got to have children. I think homeownership is one of those things that say you can't have the American dream, and I don't think that's necessarily true. I was falling into that, like, oh my God, right before I turned 45, I had been stressing about buying a house. I need to call these people. And I've gotten to the point now that I'll be 47 this year. I don't really want to buy. I mean, I don't care if I don't buy a house. I mean, personally, with this right now house that was 3 years ago has shot up an extra $150,000 to purchase that exact same house.
Right now it's really tough.
Due to COVID. And then also I realized that a lot of the folks that I hear who are homeowners, they're saying how good it is. But then you'll see them on Facebook griping that they had to come up with $14,000 for a new roof. They had to do this and they had to do that. And as a renter, I don't have any children to leave my legacy to. I've learned other ways to build wealth. So I have about 6 different streams of income if I want to build wealth. So I feel like what I'm making up in not being a home buyer, I'm doing the other ways. But one of the most things I like about renting is the convenience that when something tears up, I can call the maintenance folks and they're going to come fix it.
Right.
And when you rent a house, whether it's $1,800 or $2,000 a month, you basically going to pay your first month rent and your next month rent. You probably gonna come out of your pocket no more than $4,000. But trying to buy a house, some people been talking about $10,000, $12,000, $13,000 down. It's just a lot. And it's just a lot. And then most of the home buying programs, that the home owner assistance program, are not really in the best neighborhoods, and so I don't understand why people who want to live in nicer, more decent neighborhoods can't get down payment assistance. So I just decided it ain't for me. I like
it's a personal preference, but I like what you said. You've got several other streams of revenue and ways to build wealth, and that's the most important thing. Whichever tool and path you use to do it is really it's an individual thing. So I know that you are out here grinding, making money different ways. And so, that could end up being the same amount of, wealth for you at some point.
Mhm.
Yeah, what I
As how much?
got actually when I bought my home, because it was built in 2005 and I bought in 2018. And so what I bought a home warranty plan. So it's a plan you pay annually, and they said you should get one because it's right about now your stuff you're gonna need it new. So every time something goes down in my house, I pay my $100 fee, and I got me a brand new washing machine. I got a brand new refrigerator, a brand new hot water. I forgot the proper name for that. I got a brand new HVAC system and because when they did the inspection, and plus I was researching, so I knew my home was older, and I knew I would not have the money to just pay these thousands of dollars. So I think it's like $900 annually, and every time you call for something, it's costs $100 for the service fee, and you get that back. And if I have an issue, I call them up, and they will actually reimburse me the fee that I've paid to them.
Yes.
So, but I'm glad
that's a smart product. I've got a lot. I don't have it myself, but I do have friends and my mother, other people that have found great value in having that type of. Now I had to pay almost $4,000 for a new AC because my home's 21 years old. It went out last summer in the middle of June. And so I had to do that. I had the cash, luckily, to be able to do that. But before I moved in, the plumbing had been updated. The electrical had been updated somewhat, and they're putting a new roof on as I speak that's covered by my HOA. And so those are the main functions in a house or systems that you got to be worried about. It's plumbing, electrical, the HVAC system, probably roof and exterior. But it is intimidating. I mean, it is, especially as if you're a single woman, a single person, it's intimidating, because you have to, hope and wish something doesn't go wrong. And if it does, being prepared or having the warranty or something else to be able to take care of that. So we'll just talk a little bit as, maybe a refresher for you. And then we're going to look at side by side the difference between home ownership over a 10-year period versus renting over a 10-year period and see what that looks like. So, going into a home, and I've done this process several times. The home I'm in now is the second home I owned in Georgia, but I had a duplex with my sister back home. So one of the first things after you have found the home, you make your offer, is your banker is going to order an appraisal on the property to make sure that the listing price is what the value of the home is, or it's in that same range. And the bank will only lend you what the appraised amount comes back at. So if the seller is attempting to sell a property for $300,000 and the bank appraisal comes in at $280,000, they will only lend you $280,000. You would need to come up with that additional $20,000. So the bank will only loan you what the house appraises at, no more. So that's about $400 to $500. And that's the first thing you usually pay out of pocket in this process. Then if you're really, again, you're serious, and I'm going to move over here because this comes up next, really, the earnest money. So once you find that house, you're serious about it, it's been appraised, things kind of jive, they look like they're working out. You offer the seller, or you work through your realtor, earnest money. That just shows that you're serious. That could be $1,000, it could be $2,000, but it's money that will eventually go towards your down payment if you decide to go through with the house. If you walk away from that deal, the earnest money could be kept by the seller. By the seller. They might be nice enough to give you a portion back, but they don't have to. So that's just like a down payment before the down payment to let the seller know that you're a serious buyer. Then the home inspection fees, and this can get expensive, especially if you're looking at multiple houses. I mean, when I got this house, I paid for an appraisal. I just paid for one appraisal prior to the house that I ended up buying, and that was $400. I've seen them as low as $250, as high as $500, or somewhere in that range. It's supposed to be based on the square footage of the house. So if you're buying an 800 square foot condo in Buckhead, it should be cheaper than a 3,000 square foot house in Fayetteville or wherever. It should be based on the square footage. And sometimes it's a flat fee, but they got to, go underneath the house. If there's crawl space, they've got to look at the roof. They've got to look at the insulation. You should be there with the seller when they do the inspection, so that whatever they're coming up with in their report, you should know what it is. they will send you, usually now it's pretty fancy, different than when I first bought my first house in 2004, but you'll get photos of everything. There should be nice little arrows, you know, this duct needs to be replaced, or there's shingles that are loose and you'll see an arrow pointing to that on the picture. And that's a way to negotiate the price with the seller, is if there's enough, you know, if there are, you know, things that are faulty about the house that you want repaired, you can negotiate on the price or say, I'll purchase at this price, this offer, if these things are repaired. So those fees, again, probably $300 to $500 for each inspection. The down payment. Now, this is what we've been talking about. There are a lot of ways now to offset the down payment, but you know, traditionally, you know, people in the past, the going amount that people were generally doing as a down payment was about 20% of the purchase price. But 3 to 5% is kind of that minimum that you need to come up with, or find a program that can give you the down payment assistance in that 3 to 5% range. Now, I'll give you an example. At Regions Bank, and Crystal, I know you're in New York. We don't have our bank in New York. We're a Southeastern and Midwest bank. But we have a $5,000 additional down payment that we can grant to people who are themselves low to moderate income, which in Atlanta, that's anyone earning about $68,000 or less. So if you are a low to moderate income borrower, you can get that additional $500, or if you buy in a low to moderate income census tract. Now, you'd be surprised, and I know, Walisha, you said this a little bit ago, that some of these programs are only for areas that are, you know, areas no one wants to live in, but mine actually was a moderate income census tract. So not, you know, it's East Atlanta. And so it's inside the perimeter of Atlanta. And that 5,000 is for anyone that purchases in the city of Atlanta, that extra 5,000, but you can pair that with other DPA money, other down payment assistance money. In Atlanta, Invest Atlanta is one of the best programs. I also put another resource in the chat. So you can put all of your personal data in downpaymentresource.org. You know, are you a veteran? What is your income level? There's other questions you answer, and you'll get a list of all of the programs that system feels you qualify for. So again, you can pair these. And I've seen, you know, I didn't realize this, but I saw when I went into Down Payment Resource and went through this, you could be earning over $100,000 and still qualify for down payment assistance. Some are for people that are doctors, or not doctors, firefighters, police officers, teachers. So there's specific working groups, occupations that there are special programs for, and there's a lot for veterans. So that's down payment. You just probably need to come, you know, if you qualify for some of those, maybe $1,000 to $2,500. I think, Sharon, you said that earlier. That could be what you come to the table with if you qualify for down payment assistance. Closing costs, those again are about 3 to 5% of the total of whatever the amount is that you, of the value of the home. And that's just to transfer the title, that's for any legal fees. So it does cost money, but you can negotiate. Right now is a seller's market, so you're not seeing a whole lot of sellers cover this. But when it's the opposite and it's a buyer's market, you'll see most, you know, sellers are willing to either pay all of the closing costs because they're going to get a nice little check when they sell the house. So it's not, you know, it may be worth it for them to just pay those closing costs. And then sometimes people will split it 50-50. So that can be negotiated of who pays the closing costs. But those are generally all of the different costs that are associated with getting a mortgage. But it is likely, again, you could come to the closing and just have to come out of your pocket $1,000 to $2,500. But that doesn't include the inspection fee and the appraisal fees, but that could be another $1,000. So it's really not all that expensive if you find the right resources. And so,
Tiffany, I wanted to share that I have a realtor friend that in Atlanta, and addressed to you, Alicia, they have some programs now where they're setting aside a certain amount of houses, and these are like built from the ground up. Over there in near the Browns Mill golf course off Cleveland Avenue. So my nephew is in the, he got $60,000 down payment assistance for that program, and he's getting a 3-story townhome built. That's his first home, and he's 21 years old. Yeah, and he works for DeKalb County as a correction officer. So there's a lot of programs out here. My friend Stephen Adams, he has all the information. Atlanta is really doing this, trying to get the homes that have been sitting there or built and making them affordable for people. And like you said,
Yes.
certain demographics as well. So it's
There-
it's out there,
yeah.
but it's just a process because of the COVID and the building materials. If you're buying something you're gonna have built from the ground up, but they do have resale homes too, that you get that same kind of benefit.
Yeah, there are more opportunities than ever since George Floyd and the country being focused on bridging the racial equity gap. They
Mhm.
know, banks know, and other partner organizations know that home ownership is the best way to do that. So you'll see the headlines, they've been all over the place the last couple of years. You know, Bank of America just pledged X number of millions of dollars towards Black home ownership, and it's specifically Black home ownership. It's not just minority, it is specifically Black home ownership. And so, yes, more than ever now, there's more money and dollars out there to help to bridge that, you know, down payment gap for people. So yeah, it's worth looking in. And I'm the chair of the board for Atlanta Neighborhood Development Partnership, and they're a CDFI that provides lending to builders
Mhm.
to either build or preserve affordable housing. And they only will sell their houses to people that are in that low and moderate income level. And they, yes.
They got anything for people willing to transplant to Atlanta?
That's a good question. I don't know if you have to be a resident already, probably have to be a resident in the city of Atlanta or the 28 county metro area. I can find out. I think you do have to be a resident though to qualify. Yeah, but look up ANDPI. I'll put that in the chat, .org. I should know that as the chair of their board, but I'll put their information in
So
this.
Tiff, the ANDP, they're part of Neighbors Works, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I've been wanting to take some classes, some courses through.
Yes, NeighborWorks
A
has
lot
some
of the
great
green courses I'm
courses.
interested in. Yeah,
Yes.
and I want to do something with that.
Yeah, and ANDP also has a connection with the Federal Home Loan Bank's down payment assistance program. So they're always telling me, if you've got people, send them our way, send them our way. So if you go to that same website, you can look up their down payment assistance program. So yeah, so there's just, it takes research, it takes work, but it takes a desire to want, to do this as well, because it is a process. So I want to walk through the process really quickly. The first thing is when you're applying for a mortgage is to get just pre-qualified, not pre-approved, but just pre-qualified, which is you're just putting information in the bank's website application, or in, if you're going in person to do this, you'd be sitting with a mortgage lender, not a regular banker, but a mortgage lender. And then you put your information, this is how much I make, this is, some more information about me, and you'll get a notification within 24 hours that says, based on what you told us, this is what we feel you will qualify for. The next step would be to actually go through a pre-approval. That's when it's the show and prove phase, where you're actually submitting all of that data, the proof of pay, pay stubs, your last 2 months of your bank statements, maybe your W-2, 401ks, anything that's, an account that shows a balance, that would be asked for you to submit, your ID, all of that stuff. And then they're going to look at your credit report, again, tell you what you need to gather, and then they'll give you the loan disclosure that says, this is the terms of the loan, this is what it would look like. Well, actually, before that, they give you just basic loan disclosures. Then they're analyzing all of your documentation. They're getting that appraisal on the property you're interested in. They make the loan decision, and then they give you the terms of the loan, what interest rate, what is the number of years. You can select the number of years. You can do a 15-year mortgage and pay more every month and get it knocked out and pay less interest. You could do 20, you could do 30. Some people have done 40. I don't think that's a great idea. The last piece of the process is just showing up to the loan closing at the lawyer's closing office typically, and signing away everything to get the keys. And you always want to do a final walkthrough of the property before you get to that point, to make sure any repairs were done the day of closing, I would say. Make sure that looks good, because once you get the keys, that is your property. So just be mindful of that. Let's see, this is acting slow. So this is one of the last pieces, and I know we are running out of time. We had such good conversation. I know we didn't get to the money management piece. We might, if you got 5 extra minutes, go over just a little bit because I do want to share
That's fine.
Okay, so this is just an assumption of 2 different people. One's a homeowner, one is a renter. And the assumption is down here, ownership assumptions, the property value of the home for the owner is $110,000. Their mortgage payment is $800. And what are the 4 pieces, what are the 4 things included, or I should say 3 things that are included in your mortgage payment? Well, it's actually 4. So when you make your payment for your mortgage to the bank, what are the pieces that are included in your mortgage payment? So it's the
taxes.
Yes, so it's your taxes. So you don't have to make a separate tax bill until you've paid the house off. Then you would make the tax payment to the county or city. So it's your taxes get wrapped up into your mortgage payment. It's the insurance on the property, and it's the principal and interest. Those are the 4 pieces. So when you hear of someone's house payment, it includes all 4 of those things. You're not making these separate payments. It's all bundled into one payment. So on 110,000, mortgage payment 800. Annual appreciation assumption is that it's going to go up in value 5% a year. Depending on the market and the economy, it could be much greater than that. We saw what happened in 2008 when everything crashed and houses were overpriced and people lost. So it just depends, but most of the time it's going to appreciate in value. The rent assumptions, initial rent is 800 and the annual rent will increase 3% a year. So if you look at, apples to apples, it doesn't look much different. The homeowner over the course of the year paid $9,600, the renter paid $9,600. But the equity builders and the tax deduction that you'll see for the homeowner is because they are paying interest on this investment, they get to deduct all of the interest that they paid for the course of the year on their taxes, which is pretty nice. They also get to deduct the taxes that they paid on that home. And this is probably, when I've paid insurance and taxes, I'm looking at these, or I should say taxes, it's probably somewhere around this $1,200 to $2,200, depending on the neighborhood. The better the neighborhood, usually the taxes are higher, but that's probably about right. And then the mortgage equity, meaning how much they've built up over the course of the year and what has gone actually towards the principal, not the interest, but just the principal, is $1,697. So effectively, they really only paid $1,514 versus $9,600 because they get these write-offs and these deductions. Compared to the renter, there is no deductions. It's just a straight $9,600. Now, after 10 years, if you look at the amount that they paid towards the actual loan itself, the principal, they've paid in more than $21,000. The house has appreciated about $5,000. So they're in the positive about $26,000 with the equity and the appreciation. Whereas with the renter, they just paid over $110,000 and they don't have any type of equity that they've built. That's the landlord or the owner. So again, I just think it's good to just look at that. There are definitely pros and cons of home ownership. We already talked about them, but just important to know long-term, what the value of home ownership can look like versus renting. So I just want to quickly talk about a suggestion because we're running out of time. If you haven't looked at your spending plan or your budget recently, I always say starting at the 1st of the month is a good time. We're at the 1st of April, it's Financial Literacy Month. And so one of the worksheets that I included for you all is a tracker, and you can start this today, but it's going to give you the date. Let's see. So it looks like this, but it's the date, what you spent money on or how you earned money. And then there's 2 columns at the end, whether it was income or expenses. So this will be in the handouts that you get. It looks like a checkbook register, but I think the best thing to do to, be prepared to stay on track with your finances and build your savings and pay off debt is to know what you're doing right now. So know where your money comes from, but also know where it goes. So just track that for 30 days and go through April 30th. It's really simple. If you go buy a bag of chips, write it down. If you spent $20 on parking, write it down. If you received, and this is important too, because a lot of us do have side hustles and other ways to make money, but we're not really tracking it. It's important to track all of your income, no matter where it comes from, because that will give you a true sense of what an average month looks like for you for certain types of income. So this is just another format of that. You can find whatever works best, but I like the method that I'm going to be sharing with you all of just the day, what it was, and then whether it was income or expenses. So track that for 30 days. At the end of the 30 days, you'll see another worksheet that has some categories where you can put your totals of your income, your totals for expenses. And the goal for the next 30 days is really looking for ways to increase your income, which we know, we got gross income, we got net income. Net is what we get to take home. But ways to increase that net income that is going to be your disposable income to use for whatever purpose you want. What are some ways that you all are increasing your income besides just general wages? What are some opportunities out here in 2022 to increase your income?
Food delivery.
Okay, so like Instacart, food delivery. And for Grubhub and DoorDash, if you've got a car, basically you can make money that way. And just really logging in when you feel like it as an extra way to make money.
I've been trying to do the tablet distribution. They got $14.2 billion to do the, lifeline distribution of the connectivity for people that need Wi-Fi, and they're distributing the tablets.
Okay.
So I've been trying to get on with it, but I think they're gonna have. I got a letter back about my background, Tiff, like today. But it's funny because the federal government gave me a agent ID. You have to get approved for that first to be an agent. So yeah,
Ain't that something? So
I
you got a clearance.
I was gonna do it through SafeLink. I was on with another company. But the company didn't turn out to be that good, and they lost their contract with the government, so I'm still out here trying to get that on because it's very lucrative.
Okay. See, that's, and I've seen emails come across from Walisha, from you about canvassing or just temporary positions, even that, where there's an immediate need for X number of months or weeks or whatever the case may be. So yeah, I like that idea, finding a way to, where there's some type of distribution or a need to get out there and do some work temporarily. That's a good way to do it. I do Poshmark. I sell clothes online. They're not new clothes, they're used clothes, or they come right out of my closet or the Goodwills. Matter of fact, I sold a shirt today for $20, so I have to ship that when I get back home. But I've made over $12,000 doing that. And that's been over since 2017. That's not like in a short period of time. And it does take hustle, because you got to be shopping and you got to list it, got to take pictures, the lighting has to be good, you got to put the description together, and then you got to ship. But I like to shop, so I figure I get my little fix of shopping, but I also get to make money. So that works for me. That's a good way to make extra money. I also do interior design on the side, staging homes or helping people with their design plans. And I just came up with my own model for that, got an LLC. So that's another extra way to make money. I always say, find something you're passionate about and that comes natural to you. And that's not extra work. But those are some ways I think you can make some extra money. There are so many ways out there at your fingertips every day. You should be making some money off your phone. That's how I look at it. We talked about expenses, so I won't get into that. But just some last tips, and there's a lot more information in the handouts. Making sure, as a part of budgeting and money management, always staying organized, keeping accurate records of everything for tax purposes, for reasons of if you need to return something, to make sure you're not going to be late with a bill, making sure that you're paying those bills at least a week before they're due if you're using the regular mail. If it's the day of or the week of, going online, making sure that is set up, keeping your tax records for at least 3 years, preferably 7, keeping records in a safe place in your home or a safe deposit box. And then bargain hunting, comparison shopping, waiting for sales, asking for a better deal on those big ticket items like appliances, group discounts, veteran discounts, senior discounts. I have a friend, every time we go out, she's asking for a veteran discount, and you'd be surprised how many places offer 10 to 20%, even Papa Do's. I was like, what? Okay, closed mouth don't get fed.
I make sure I show my AARP card.
Okay, AARP, AAA, that's another one. AAA, that's
Hotels
great
and car
discounts.
rentals,
Your
yeah.
school ID card, your school ID. 'Cause
School
I'm still
ID,
in school.
student discounts, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm getting
Yeah.
And
one.
he's talking nice sometimes. I'm so sweet. I'm like, don't you want to help me out a little bit? And I go Woodbury and they give me discounts sometimes just with my nice little attitude.
That's
So
it. They can offer it sometimes. You just got to ask and you got to be nice. That's a good point. So those are just some suggestions for ways to save. And the very last slide is, when it comes to just other tips, saving your change. A lot of us aren't living on a cash basis anymore, but we do still have dollar bills and change that we could put aside that can end up being a substantial amount monthly or annually. Saving your tax refund or using that towards one of your financial goals like debt repayment or just having a rainy day fund. A lot of people do just want to spend that money, but think of it how it can get you ahead or be a little bit of a maybe a down payment for a home or something else. Saving cash gifts, it's extra money, it's a windfall. You didn't expect it anyways, putting that aside. Saving any bonuses, making sure you're using a bank and all those free services that come with your bank account, paying your bills on time, direct deposit, that would be one of those services. Avoiding new debt, paying off your credit cards and loans early, reinvesting any type of dividends you earn, keep making monthly payments on everything, joining an investment club, or just learning YouTube University, like we said earlier, and always take free money. If something's offered to you like down payment assistance or financial aid or scholarships or grants for small business owners, take advantage of that free money and look for it. I just won a $500 grant for my nonprofit for Project Restart through Enrich Her. I just had to fill out an application. The grand prize was $5,000, but I was happy to get 500. But, a lot of times it's just those small applications that you put, sometimes it's copying and pasting something you already had. But looking for that free money, especially for nonprofits. And Crystal, I know you are looking towards that, but grants are going to be, the way to go before a loan for a nonprofit for sure.
yeah.
Yes. So that is it. I know we kind of rushed through this last part, but I hope that, you can take away a couple nuggets. You're feeling motivated for the start of Financial Literacy Month. This was a great day to kick this off, Walisha, and to have this seminar. I'm feeling charged up. I have a class tomorrow I'm in Milan, Tennessee, for a friend of mine whose parents just passed away last year, and he wants to start a legacy in his hometown, and he wants to start with financial education for the community. So I'm just happy to be here to kick that off too.
Well, thank you so very much for your
you.
willingness,
I love
to always come and educate us. And I know I get a lot of questions sometimes when people say, well, financial literacy, what's the difference? It's the same for people who are not formally incarcerated. And it is, and then it isn't, because there's a different type of plan for folks who are formally incarcerated. I personally feel that yes, we are able to budget our money the same as everybody else. Yes, we are able to attain money the same thing, but our goals are a little bit different. Where somebody is 24 and just got out of college, their 5-year plan is to probably get married and purchase a house and maybe go on a cruise. But if someone is 25 and they've been in prison since they were 17, their 5-year plan looks completely different. They're talking about getting their fines and fees paid off. They're talking about how to get their probation monitoring fees paid off, how to be able to budget that into the money that they have. So even though they are similar, they're a little bit different when it comes with aligning with our goals. And so that is the object, the purpose of why we do what we do at New Life, is to empower folks with criminal records. And before we get ready to go and start recording, we will, on April 5th and April 7th, we will be having screenings of A Part, which is about 3 women who are in Ohio. And the film will actually talk about the war on drugs and how it has impacted women. Women are the fastest growing incarcerated population, and 80% of those women are mothers. And so I'd like to invite you all out to join us for those. That'll be April 5th and April 7th. They are virtual. If you can, please join. I just dropped the upcoming links. That'll be also in the email. And I actually got an email today from someone who wanted to find out if our clients will be interested in a workshop about available housing payment assistance resources. I say, yes, ma'am. So as
Yes.
soon as she can get back with me, as soon as she can get back with me on that, I'm trying to get it scheduled for April as well. I will make sure I send that out to you all. But do not hesitate to also watch us on Facebook, at our Facebook page, because a lot of our announcements that we do host there on our Facebook page. And other than that, I will start recording. And thank you so very much, Tiffany. You have been
Thank
amazing.
you. Thank you to y'all, and it's great to see, familiar faces and to meet someone new. Crystal, it was great to have you here. And,
Nice to
I'm
have you. Thank you for
always
having
here for, yes, absolutely. I'm always up for a good financial education class. And, I enjoyed this thoroughly. So thank
Tiffany,
you
when
so
you get a
much.
chance, can you show me the screen that you had at first where it was talking about the percentage of white
Yes.
households and black households that get denied?
Yes, let me, I'm gonna just go all the way back.
171,000, I think.